Hey you guys, hope you're doing well today. Today I want to talk about difficult conversations. I recently read this book called Difficult Conversations and wanted to share with you some of what I learned. And this might be a multi-part video series, we'll see. There are three types of difficult conversations. And I want to focus on the first type today. That first type is called the what happened conversation. The what happened conversation. Typically, when problems arise in our life, we try and figure out what happened. And the way we do this is through two different paths. Now, the first path is what we've been programmed to participate in. And the second is what we're going to talk about how we can program ourselves to move toward. We're going to reprogram towards this second path. So when we're having the what happened conversation, the first path that we typically take is blaming others for what happened. This is a path that is externally focused. It is spreading the problem to others. It is identifying perpetrators of the problem. And the problem with identifying perpetrators is that the problem then becomes perpetual. Perpetrators perpetuate the problem, right? So this is how we're going to think about it. If we start to label others as perpetrators, the problem is going to continue and continue forever. It's never ending. Therefore, it ends at death, and it is a dead end. It's a dead end conversation. So, when we're having this what happened conversation, what happened to, what happened? What we want to avoid is blame. Labeling others as perpetrators. Because what this does for the perpetrator is causes them to reflect you. And you now also become a perpetrator. No, it's not my fault, it's your fault. And see how this conversation is going to go? This is a conflict conversation. No problems will be solved through this. So, how do we approach this? Through the second path that we're going to reprogram our minds to think about from here on out. So instead of blaming, what we're going to think about is contribution. Contribution. This concept of contribution is going to become increasingly important when we're having conversations. And the reason this is going to become important is that it's internally focused. This way of thinking brings attention back into us, and it forces us to ask ourselves, how did I contribute to the problem? Blame, fault is no longer part of the conversation. Just contribution. Now, what contribution acknowledges is that each and every person who have experienced this problem have contributed to it in some way. I think this might be difficult for some people to hear, but let's think about what contribution allows us to achieve, and that's solutions. Contribution allows us to solve the problems, not to perpetuate them. And this is really what we're seeking deep down, is solutions. So, when we focus on us, me, how I contributed to the problem, what are we doing exactly? Well, we're stepping forward and we're setting an example. So what does that make us? That makes us leaders. Contribution thinking makes us leaders. Because when we explicitly state how we contributed to a problem, that allows other people the opportunity to go inside themselves and think the same thing. They'll start to wonder, well, how did I contribute to this problem? So you've given them the opportunity to follow, to become a follower from your leadership. Whereas perpetrator, victim, and creating the other person out to be at fault for something, blaming them, they're just going to redirect that blame to someone else. It's not going to work. It's not going to solve problems. It's going to perpetuate them. Meanwhile, contribution thinking is the only way that they are going to internalize how they contributed to the problem and how you contributed to the problem, how I contributed. And that's what matters most. This realization that all the problems in our lives that we're experiencing, we're contributing to those problems. We're creating them. Right? After all, what is a problem? A problem is an opinion. It's a concept. It's an idea. Who's responsible for creating ideas, for thinking thoughts, and for feeling feelings? You are. I'm responsible for my own problems. I create my own problems. And you know what I also create? Is my solutions. The solutions to those problems. If I start to blame others and perpetuate the problem, label others as perpetrators, my problems are going to keep existing over and over again in the world. And it's going to seem like they're happening out there, the problems. It's going to seem like everything's happening in the external world. Now, all of my problems exist within me. And that's the truth. That is both the unfortunate truth and the fortunate truth. Realizing that these problems are mine. And so this is something to think about and to act on in our day-to-day lives. When difficult conversations start arising and we have to figure out what happened. Well, instead of figuring out who's to blame, let's figure out how we got here in the first place so that we can begin to solve the problem and not perpetuate it. All right, that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know what you think about these these videos of me discussing conversation and how to navigate difficult conversations. And again, I highly recommend this book, Difficult Conversations. I'll put a link in the description of this video so that you can check it out. And I'm wishing you the best today. Keep pointing the finger back into ourselves, and from there, things will begin to solve instead of perpetuate. They'll begin to dissolve. So, all right, wishing you well. Have a good one.